Switch my phone off.
Trying to confuse you with Dragon Meat Special. One page upside down.
Hello everybody, great to have you here. Yes, yesterday was Robert Aickman's 100th birthday and this is a birthday party. So I hope you're just all going to enjoy yourselves, have a good time and meet each other and we'll see what happens. We've been celebrating Robert Aickman's life and work for the last 3 weeks in this show which we call Intrusions, looking after Aickman. It's one of a number of shows we have in the house. My wife Monica is a gallerist and curator as well as an artist. And we have shows here 3 or 4 times a year with various people. And this is the first collaboration with the world of books and the first time I've really been instrumental in helping choose the pictures. We've been connecting Aickman's vision of the world into the vision of a number of contemporary printmakers, and we've chosen the artists really for a resonance with the worldview that runs through the strange stories. As you look round, which you'll get the chance to do later, you'll see that we've now associated the pictures with fragments of text from some of the stories, and that was done afterwards. These were not pictures that were chosen with the stories in mind. We hung it and then wandered around and saying, well, I wonder what that one reminds me of. So I'll be interested in your own associations to that. Robert Aickman had many rich themes running through his life. He had an impressive range of interests and connections, and some of these actually we've discovered reach into our own families and friends. Robert was a friend of Monica's parents at an early stage in his life, and a great friend of his was Victor Mayo. We've got Victor's daughter Florence here. It's always nice to discover those things. I knew nothing about this when I started talking to Monica about Aickman, but Monica, as ever, said, oh, that name's familiar, I think he knew my parents. Anyway, he's now remembered and being honoured for his centenary by 2 rather different groups of people. There's the lovers of ghost stories and there's the lovers of canals and the inland waterways movement. And they've been rather separate. There is some crossover between the two, and I'm hoping that that crossover will expand and that both these things get sort of integrated, because they were both very important parts of his life, and I think need to be honoured together rather than separately. For those who don't know, Robert was one of the founders of the Inland Waterways Association and was an absolutely crucial campaigner in keeping the British canal system open and then ultimately restored, or most of it restored, after the Second World War. And it's always interesting in history to wonder how much difference one man made and how much things were movements that were going to happen anyway. But I think you could make a very good case that Robert, as an individual, played a great part in keeping the canal system open in its entirety. There's some information about this around you, particularly in the front room. And those of you who have maybe read all the strange stories but want more Aickman to read, there are 71 editions of the Inland Waterways Bulletin, which he wrote virtually single-handed from the mid-40s to the mid-60s. And they're absolutely compelling reading, because it's Aickmanesque descriptions of committees and of lobbying programs and fundraising events up and down the country. And it's a delight, so I would recommend those. He himself, though, did say regretfully later in life that he wished he'd written novels instead. I think there are great novels, more on that later. But he's probably most of us here know him as one of our finest writers of ghost stories, or rather, to use his phrase, strange stories, because there often aren't any ghosts in them. And it's that strangeness that we've tried to engage with in the exhibition. So after we finish these sessions, we'll move the furniture out of the way and you'll be able to look at the pictures at your leisure. I would particular welcome today for Heather Smith and her husband, Dr. Graham Smith. Heather's Robert's literary executor, but Heather and Graham were friends of Robert for a long time towards the end of his life. I think you said you became close friends in the attempted rescue of the River Derwent.
Yes, indeed. Although we had known him before.
Yes. And he stayed with you quite often?
I would say every month for a weekend for several years, and then often we would come down to stay with him in between times. So yes, a lot.
So I'm sure a lot of us will be fascinated to hear more about your impressions of him. But thank you. It's a privilege to have you here, and we look forward to maybe you might have something to say later about what he thought of his work, which will be very interesting. And how, I suppose how he saw his achievement with his strange stories in terms of his life as a whole. We're going to have, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to have a panel discussion after the tea break. I'm planning to expand the panel slightly though and put everyone on it. So we're all going to maybe chip in and have a conversation going and move it around the room. And from the front here we're going to choreograph a large group discussion rather than sit here and inflict our own views on you. But we do have 4 headline panellists though, and I will introduce them to you briefly before we move on. It's a tremendous pleasure to have Mike Harrison here with us. M. John Harrison, you will know him as from the bookshelves. Mike's going to read one of his own stories later, and I think many of us would agree that he's probably the most compelling of today's strange story writers. He started in the world of the new wave science fiction of the 60s and 70s, working on the magazine New Worlds with Michael Moorcock and others. I think you've probably not written as much as Moorcock has. For those who don't know him, Mike's books are tremendously considered and perfectly formed. Some of them are science fiction, but much of it isn't science fiction. It's what I would call sort of formidable, influential modern literature. You need to read it if you haven't.
I think strange stories,
Yeah.
it's a good blanket term.
Yes, it covers, yes, and if a story's not strange, that's pretty strange. There's not many ghosts in your work, but I do think there are a lot of haunted people.
Yeah, I've never seen the difference. I mean,
Yes.
one of the reasons I like Aickman so much is that who's the ghost and who's haunted
Yes.
and who's the ghost.
Yeah.
We're all ghosts. That's how I feel.
Ray Russell. Ray runs Tartarus Press with his partner, Rosalie Parker. If you don't know the Tartarus Press books, then you've made an important discovery today. They produce 5 hardback limited editions of strange stories. And we've got their Aickman volumes, which are only a small part of your own book, but a significant part, as we'll hear later. They're on display in the front gallery. Ray is a writer himself. He's published a number of collections, and I think you've got a short novel, The Dark Return of Time, which has just come out from Swan River Press, which is there to be read when you get hold of it. you're also an occasional illustrator and musician, I believe.
A dabbler in various things.
Yes. And a keen video maker, with Ross, who's over there. Tony Grisoni. Tony's a different type of storyteller. He's a film and TV scriptwriter, long preoccupied with the dark side of life. Some of you might have seen Southcliffe, which Tony wrote for Channel 4, and it was out, was it August last year?
Yeah.
Around this time. Tragedy, grief, remorse, that sort of stuff. More on those things.
That's sold it to me. My new agent.
He's done, some of his other work is In This World, which is about Afghan refugees making their way to the UK. And he did an adaptation of David Peace's novels, Red Riding, for Channel 4, which was 2009, I think. And Tony's co-written several of Terry Gilliam's films, including Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is a book that I found so frightening I didn't manage to finish it.
It's not as frightening as Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes. And John Ballatt, a good friend and colleague who started a career in the mental health world working in therapeutic communities, and he's heard a fair few strange stories along the way. He's written a book called Intelligent Kindness with his wife Penny Camplin. It's about kindness and how kindness goes wrong, and it's been a runaway bestseller among GPs and psychiatrists, but I think it deserves a wider readership. So I have persuaded John to bring some copies along today, and please do have a look. And he'll also
It's beautifully here, absolutely.
John's been on an Aickman journey with me over the last few years. The recent leg of this journey was along the Llangollen Canal last November to go over the Pontyselfly Aqueduct, and late November is a great time for a canal holiday. You can sail from dawn to dusk and still spend most of the time in the pub. John is going to read the first part of The Inner Room from Robert Aickman's collection Sub Rosa, which was published in 1968. If you don't know Aickman's style, it might seem strange, discursive, rambling piece at first, but with Aickman, as you read on, you discover that every detail matters. He's weaving a psychological tapestry, and his people and situations later fit into patterns, as you see. And we've been thinking about visual and narrative art over the last few weeks here with the artists' talks, and Aickman's not a visual artist, but he does build up psychological pictures that are with precise observations of attitude, demeanour, and snippets of back history. And his style is often elegant, it's sometimes clunky, but it's always very evocative. The Inner Room has all his best qualities. It's a ghost story of sorts, but it's also about English and German family life. It's about England between the wars, and it's about the things that get locked away. So I think we'll hand over to John and listen to some Aickman. And he'll sit down beside you.